Hi, I'm Sutian Dong, and I'm a partner at Female Founders Fund. When it comes to raising money, man, how did I raise my first dollar? Through a lot of meetings and a lot of no's. In VC, you have to raise money for your funds very much in the way that you raise money for a startup. And as an emerging manager, when you raise money, the experience is quite similar to raising money for a startup. When people look at you and they say, that's a unique idea. Like, what's the traction? Like, what are you gonna show me? And so I raised my first dollar by talking to a lot of people and getting a lot of no's, and finally finding a couple of investors, LPs in our fund, who believed in the vision and mission of investing in female founders and creating top decile returns. Female Founders Fund was launched in 2014, and the first fund was raised through a period of 2013 to 14. My partner, Anu, actually raised the first fund all on her own, and it took 700 meetings, and we ended up with 70 LPs. So if you think about that, I like to joke, I like to say, oh, it's a really good close rate, like 10% isn't bad at all, right? But when you think about grinding through 700 meetings, it's an uphill battle. When we raised Fund 2, and I joined ahead of raising Fund 2, we went out to more institutional investors and did that through a period of 2016 to 17. The fundraising process for both funds was pretty long, and I think we had a lot of learnings along the way as we scaled from a $5.85 million fund to a $27 million fund. I fell into venture. When I was going to school, I don't think anyone thought about venture as a career path. Like, venture remains the sort of weird stepchild of private equity. And I got into venture because I happened to know a guy named Lawrence Lenahan. When I was an undergrad, I took a class from him actually, and then worked at, I was director of marketing for a fashion company that he had been invested in. And I got to know him through that process, and his day job was the founder and managing partner of First Smart Capital. And so it was one of those moments where you meet the right person, develop a relationship over time, I think create value for that other person over time, and it happened to be sort of like a right place, right time thing where I joined First Mark. I went to NYU. And so when I was going to NYU, a lot of people, especially Stern, where I went, a lot of people wanted to get into banking or private equity, and the entrepreneurial ecosystem was not developed in New York at that time. And so it's been really amazing to see how students, not just at NYU, but across the country, are thinking about entrepreneurship and working in startups as a viable, not just a viable, but a really compelling career path. What is my mantra in life? That's a great question. I think it's saying yes, right? Like, yes and, right? I think this is sort of like an improv tactic, right? Like, oh, never say no, right? Say yes and so to always find ways to add to something. And that has really driven me. I do really believe that the place where people are happiest, right, is at the intersection. If you think about a Venn diagram, if this is what you're good at, and this is what you're passionate about, and this is what is additive to the world, right? If you can find the thing that sits you in the center of all of that, I think that's where you get the most fulfillment. Doing something that you're good at, that you're passionate about, that is doing something that is expanding the worldview of people around you. I think the venture ecosystem has changed pretty dramatically. The New York City ecosystem in 2009 was very, very small, and it was a burgeoning community driven by, I think, the recession creating a lot of accidental entrepreneurs, right? By the municipal support, especially that Mayor Bloomberg had at that time, by just the increase in talent, right, and the increase in funding in New York. But the venture community, fast forward 10 years in the startup community has changed a lot, right? Round sizes have gotten much larger. I think there's more money than ever going into this space, right? And what that's caused me to really narrow in on is understanding what I do well, understanding what Female Founders Fund brings to the table, right? And really optimizing to do that and really excel and be super at that piece versus saying, hey, I'm going to sort of boil the ocean and own the market. I think venture is becoming more and more specialized over time, which means that you're not seeing just stage specialization, but also industry focus. And now entrepreneurs, like when you're a great entrepreneur, you can raise money from all sorts of people, right? Entrepreneurs are choosing smart capital and people who bring more to the table than just a check. The biggest challenge that, I think I've faced and the fund has faced is that we were first to market. And launching in 2014 with this view that, entrepreneurship was changing and the people who are creating the major, massive companies of tomorrow are gonna look a little bit different than what they do today, that view was really non-obvious. And so it was a challenge to get people to subscribe to the notion that female founders are going to create the next industry-defining companies. And that has been, certainly over the last 2.5, 3 years, that has been proven out more and more, right? But that's one of the biggest challenges, right? Of believing wholeheartedly in a thesis and an investment focus in female founders and almost having to wait, right, and prove out to the rest of the market that this was not a trend or a fad or something cute, right, but really a class of entrepreneurs who is here to stay. What do I attribute to my success? It feels like the Oscar speech, right? We're like, I'd like to thank my parents, I'd like to thank my family. Wow, I think a lot of, so a couple things. One, I don't think success ever stops, right? Or the chase for more, at least for me, ever stops. I do think that success is a matter of, or having created the opportunities for myself today, it's a matter of saying yes to a lot of things, right? Being really, really curious, working hard, and then also being really lucky. I'm not, not everyone has the advantage of even growing up in America, right? Going to school, not having student loan debt. A lot of things have contributed to getting me to where I am, right? And that's, and I think that's one of the views that I bring to the table as an investor, which is, how, as I look at entrepreneurs, how have they achieved success, right? What have they done today? How many miles have they traveled, right, to get to where they are? And I think having a view of feeling very lucky for what you have makes us also have a view of feeling very lucky to invest in the founders that we do. What do I want to see change in venture? I mean, there's a lot, right? That's my knee-jerk reaction. There's a lot that should change in venture. I think the focus is how do we change one thing at a time, right, and do it really well. That doesn't mean that we don't take a intersectional approach to creating diversity within the venture ecosystem. But for me, my goal has always been to get more women in positions of check writing power with the hope that more women writing checks will result in more women getting funded. I think the world is accelerating at a rapid pace and faster than ever. And when I think about what's next for me and what's next for Female Founders Fund, it's really continuing to push the envelope in redefining what a venture firm does and what it looks like. I think these successful funds of tomorrow are not just going to be checks and people who are really good at pontificating on boards, right? The successful funds of tomorrow will bring much more than just like a talking head to the table, right? And don't get me wrong, I think many talking heads can be very useful on boards, but the next iteration of venture will be something that much more resembles, I think, a platform and a suite of services that provide, the network, the community, the events, all the other intangibles that hopefully help a company go from 0 to 1 and then to scale. And so for us, we're always challenging ourselves, well, what can Female Founders Fund do that's different from other funds? And what can we do that provides value, right? Quantifiable value above and beyond just capital and thought that we bring to the table. Sutian Dong is somebody who believes that the future will be really different. And Sutian Dong is somebody who hopes to be a small part in instituting that change for both funders and